Bunch out there. So if anybody sees anybody out there, drag them in. Good afternoon. And I would like to introduce to my far left, we have our rock star, Jennifer Popick, who does all of our federal legislation. She's amazing. She's shaking her head no, but it's a big affirmative, let me tell you. And then we have Lauren Eden with us, our guest speaker, and I will give their bios in just a few minutes. And I would like to recognize the sponsorships of today's session, starting with Florida Right to Life. Florida, what's not to love? Florida Right to Life was instrumental in the passage of the Heartbeat Protection Act, which protects the unborn child at 6 weeks gestation. I was very proud to be standing right next to our wonderful governor for the bill signing. The act also allocated $25 million in support of pregnant women in need. Florida's pro-life governor, Ron DeSantis, proudly signed the bill into law literally the night of the day that it was passed. Our second sponsor is a great state as well, Missouri Right to Life. Missouri continues in its, woohoo, Missouri's in the house. Missouri continues its support for policies to protect the unborn from abortion and to allocate resources for pregnant women. Through the hard work of pro-life Missourians and the grace of God, Missouri became the first state in the United States to protect unborn children from abortions right after the Dobbs decision. Now Missouri is facing pro-abortion attacks like never before. But with more hard work, the generosity of pro-lifers, and continued help from God, Missouri Right to Life will be victorious again. We thank Florida Right to Life and Missouri Right to Life for their co-sponsorships. Thank you, both of states. And we are now going to have a video. So if one could have cue that up, please.
Hello, this is Congressman John Joyce, and I want to thank you for being here today in support of life. Before coming to Congress, I practiced as a physician and took an oath to first do no harm. When I was in medical school, I learned about the development and journey of a child in the womb of his mother. At 6 weeks, a baby is developing a mouth, a nose, ears, and most important, a heartbeat of their own. At 12 weeks, a baby has fingers and toes. Walk with me on this journey. At 15 weeks, a baby can sense light and even has taste buds. At 19 weeks, a child can hear and know their mother's voice. These lives are precious, and they must be protected. By 22 weeks, many babies can survive outside the womb if they are born prematurely. Surely these are children. We in Congress have an obligation to protect human lives. Your continued advocacy and your support are instrumental in the fight for human life. Your dedication, your prayers, and your continued vigilance have helped to save untold American lives. Thank you to the National Right to Life and all of you who continue to speak for those without a voice and to stand up for the children who cannot yet stand up for themselves. Thank you. And may God continue to bless you. And may God continue to bless these great United States of America.
That video was presented by Congressman John Joyce. He represents Pennsylvania's 13th district. He has voted consistently, as you can tell by that video, to defend the lives of the unborn. He's sponsoring and co-sponsoring multiple pieces of pro-life legislation. You would also be likely to see him on the floor of the House or in committee defending the unborn. According to Representative Joyce, protecting that precious God-given gift of life is not just something I talk about, it's part of my identity as a doctor. So this is the kind of congressman that we need, not only in this state, but in this country. So thank you, Congressman Joyce. We now have another video, and I believe the next one is by, yeah, we have a video in just a second from Melissa Oden. She is a master's level prepared social worker and an author. She's been here multiple times, by the way, and she's also phenomenal. She's the founder and director of both the Abortion Survivors Network, the only healing and advocacy organization for abortion survivors worldwide, and the Abortion Survivors Network Education and Policy Center, which impacts the policy issues related to abortion and abortion survivors. Melissa and her team have connected with over 450 abortion survivors, and we are honored to hear from Melissa today. May we have that video, please?
This year has been one for the memory books. I will never forget what an honor it was to be with all of you last year in Atlanta when Roe fell. And I know this year has been both celebratory and challenging. Emphasis on challenging. I wish I could be there with all of you in person, but with this momentous weekend upon us, I'm in DC with MyLive to speak with students at the Students for Life Leadership Summit, who I've mentored and worked with. You are going to be absolutely blessed, though, meeting Lauren Eden, who is a survivor from Georgia, who I was blessed to spend time with at last year's convention, but who couldn't attend in person that year. She's going to share her story with you and share more about her experience collaborating in Georgia with organizations and groups. And as I presented about last year at the convention, the Abortion Survivors Network, we're not only healing and equipping abortion survivors, but amplifying their stories and activating them. And although our outreach campaigns, so ambassadors and advocates, launch formally this fall, you are seeing survivors like Lauren, whose stories you'll be hearing from even today by video. You're seeing them actively advocating and educating in many of your states. Their experiences, their voices, all of us collaborating together to educate, change hearts and minds, cut through misinformation and outright lies, combating the fear-mongering of the abortion industry. All of us are here for such a time as this. And so I want to start today by talking a little bit about the advocacy and ambassador programs and what you'll see coming from us, so you know how we can work together. And then I want to share more with you today about what we're seeing from our corner of the pro-life world, what we see happening, and now how we're here for you, for women and families and babies at risk of abortion in a much greater way post-Dobbs and Roe. I shared last year that we would be launching ambassadors, and we have been in the process of really launching survivors in a much greater way in the last year. But I want to tell you about really how that vision has been refined and what that means for all of us in this new post-Roe world. As I shared last year, we have been working with survivors really around the globe, and we were excited to launch them as ambassadors in their states. So folks that we would have on our website that you would know are available to be a part of your efforts as well. And what we've really seen post-Roe falling is that there are many ways that survivors need to be seen and heard within their communities. And so for us, what we've done is now created a two-tier system that you're going to see us walking out. But instead of simply with a small s, right? I mean, it's a big thing. Instead of just ambassadors, what we are doing is launching a two-tier program of both advocates and ambassadors. The advocates are going to kind of be the folks that you see every single day in your communities, at your events, folks that you can reach out to who will be listed on our website, abortion survivors, and soon women who have experienced failed, stopped, and reversed abortions, and family members. That's coming. That's the next level that we'll launch. But these are everyday, ordinary folks who have a powerful story, a difficult experience, right? A vulnerable story and experience, who are living ordinary lives, right? They might be sitting next to you in church. They might be, in your child's school, whatever that is. They're your colleague, your friend. They're living their normal life, but they're an abortion survivor who want to make a difference in their communities. Those advocates are going to be folks you will find on our website. We'll be launching both of these programs in the fall, but you'll find them there on the website to know how to reach out to them and include them in things that you are doing. But those advocates will be, holding up signs at rallies. They'll be attending 40 Days for Life events, and maybe they'll share their story, whatever that is. We want survivors to be showing up, getting to know you, and even if it's simply sharing their story with one person, knowing that that makes a difference. And so that's the advocate level. So we are launching them already right now. And we've had survivors already this year speaking at marches in Montana, Kansas, Arizona, California. We've had survivors at events in those states and events like Texas, Oregon, Washington. This very weekend, we're going to have survivors in New Jersey, Louisiana. That list is even much greater than what I can think of off the top of my head. But what I want you to see is that there are survivors making a difference already. And so that number is just going to keep growing. The additional tier that we've added on top of that are ambassadors. So we're playing with a lot of different terms right now, but lots of advocates. And then the ambassadors are going to be kind of an upper tier where survivors who maybe want to be involved in an even greater capacity, so they feel like they might want to be a speaker, they might want to be testifying on policy issues. We will be selecting up to 5 adult abortion survivors, so these babies who survived abortions who are now adults. They will be applying for 1 of 5 spots each year. And again, this will be something happening every fall. But they will receive more mentoring, more coaching from our speaking coach. They'll be seen at more events like National Right to Life Convention and exhibit tables. You'll see them at places like Students for Life Summit, where we would have all 5 of those ambassadors sharing their stories together. You're going to see them at different events, and you're going to see their year of mentoring and coaching and opportunities ending with them speaking on a college campus in their area with a Students for Life fellow. Again, this is something where we've had a couple of survivors over the years, myself included, but we've never had a formal training and opportunity being launched, and this continuous pattern of survivors being seen and heard, and their short stories making an impact, especially with young people. So that is the ambassador program. So advocates, absolutely, you are going to see and hear them. Be following our website, sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already, so you can get all of these updates. We're also now partnering with Pro-Life Global to activate our international survivors as well. So right now we have survivors in France, Germany, Australia, Sri Lanka. There are more off the top of my head, but those are the big ones that I can think of, where those survivors are also being activated in their countries to be actively involved and seen and heard for the first time as well. So those are not only incredible opportunities for abortion survivors and then families, but also they're a resource and a collaborator for you as well. I want to finish by talking about babies who survive abortions. I know you knew that babies survived before Roe. Many of us survived during Roe. And I'm here to tell you babies are still surviving after Roe today, particularly by chemical abortion failure. And although we celebrate the historical passing of the Federal Born Alive Infant Protection Act in the House this year, which you'll be hearing more from Jennifer about today, we need to keep in mind, and really in the forefront of the public's minds, that there is no federal born alive protection for babies like me and Lauren, the survivors you hear from today, that survive abortions. Frankly, these bills only save a small subgroup of abortion survivors, those in later term abortions. And so what I encourage legislators and really all of you to keep in mind is that most abortion survivors are surviving early gestational abortions. And by and large, we haven't known about it. We haven't known about them because it's been kept a secret. Women haven't been talking about it. Pregnancy centers haven't been asking about it. And these babies are often carried to term or nearly full term. We haven't known who they are or what they're surviving, the needs of the mothers who have been experiencing these failed, stopped, like in cases like Lauren's, and reversed attempts. But we're working to change that for the sake of both mom and baby. And so this is what we're dealing with these days. And I want to share a couple stories with you so you can understand what we're seeing post-Roe. I'm sure, like us at the Abortion Survivors Network, you are almost feeling like you have whiplash from all of the changing landscape, politically, legislatively, culturally, the polling results, right, where people are at on any given day. But what I can tell you is that the stories that we're hearing are likely stories that you're hearing as well. You know, I came into this last year suspecting that after Roe fell, we would see a higher number of abortion survivors, simply from the standpoint that the more chemical abortions were being pushed, the more it was being done without any medical care being provided to women, no idea how far along they are gestationally. I knew that there would be a greater likelihood of abortion survivors occurring. What I didn't think about, and I'm seeing day after day, is that in this new world post-Roe, post-Dobbs, women are taking abortion pills not only at a higher frequency, but much earlier on in a pregnancy. They're finding out they're pregnant earlier. Of course, by fear mongering from the left, they feel like that's something that they need to be prepared to do. So they're finding out they're pregnant earlier. They're taking abortion pills earlier. They're discovering they're still pregnant after those abortion pills earlier. And they're grappling with what to do at an earlier stage. And of course, with this changing landscape, what is happening is that women have a much longer amount of time in that pregnancy to then attempt to abort that same baby multiple times. And we've known this. I mean, I'm sure many of you have known this from the work that you do. We have known it because many of our adult survivors that we worked with over the years survived multiple attempts to abort them. But I never envisioned that I would see it happening right in front of my face. So one of the stories that I want to share with you exemplifies this in a big way. We launched our rebuilt website earlier this spring. If you haven't visited abortionsurvivors.org, that's where you can come face to face with the data that I talked about at last year's convention, where we are identifying through Canadian correlated data that consistently we see a pattern of almost 1,800 abortion survivors in the United States. This happened even during Roe, based on this correlated data. This didn't include chemical abortion survivors. It did include at-home attempts to abort. It doesn't include babies who survived successful abortion pill reversals. But on that website, we launched it earlier this spring. And not only did it really put out that data and start talking to women like my own birth mother who have experienced failed, stopped, or reversed abortions, but what it was starting to do was talk about this and capture the attention of women who are experiencing failed chemical abortions right now. One of the first women we heard from within days of the rebuilt website launching was a woman that I'll call H. She reached out letting us know that she had taken both chemical abortion pills at about 2 weeks of gestation, knowing that she was pregnant. And she didn't experience the kind of symptoms post-abortion pill that she was told that she would. And so she was going back for blood work to determine if she was still pregnant. But she said, before I go back, I just wanted to take a deep dive on the internet and find out, like, what does this mean? If I'm still pregnant, what have I done? What does the outcome look like for this baby that I'm carrying? She wasn't afraid to call it a baby. She had other children, so she knew that it was a baby. But she said nobody talks about what happens if you take abortion pills and they fail. They don't talk about what it might look like for this baby. So just tell me the truth. If I'm still pregnant, what have I done? What am I going to do? And so I was able to jump in with her right away. And I didn't say things like, wow, what a miracle. I'm a survivor too. That's not what she needed to hear. What she needed to hear me say was, wow, you know what? You must feel pretty shocked right now. You didn't know that maybe your abortion pills might fail. You're probably in crisis wondering what your options are, right? You're wondering what your child's life might look like. I hear you saying you're worried about your own health, right? That's how we started to talk. So I put her in touch with our social worker. We started to walk this out with her. She went in for that blood work, found out she was indeed still pregnant. And as the days turned into weeks, we were talking to her, and she was able to know that many of our survivors go on to live, most of us go on to live very healthy lives, that we serve babies who survive chemical abortions, and by and large, most haven't had physical symptoms long term. Yes, we have some survivors who have deformed digits. We have some survivors who have craniofacial differences. We have many survivors who have the emotional social scars. We see some cognitive differences, but it's hard to sort out in a very limited research area how many of those would have been subjected to that no matter whether the abortion pill was taken, right? We started engaging in this, and she started to say things like, you know, I'm scared, but I can see myself loving this baby. I think I love them. But she was also saying things like, you know, my OB has made it clear I really have two options: have another chemical abortion or go straight to a surgical. And she started to say things like, what if that chemical abortion fails again? I don't think I can keep doing this. I can't even do this right now, right? This was hard enough for me. And so we were counseling her. We were walking beside her. We were talking to her about a plan on another doctor she could talk to, right? Who might be more supportive of her, even though she really saw her OB as someone that she could trust. But we were talking about all of her options and the fact that an ultrasound would be important. It wasn't going to allay all of her fears because there's no guarantee for any baby. But once she saw that baby on ultrasound, it would allay a little bit of that anxiety and get us to the next goal point in her pregnancy. And when we got to that week that she was due to have an ultrasound, she stopped talking to us. And I share that because I know so many of you can relate to that. I don't know yet what's happened to that baby who survived the first attempt to abort them. But I have every hope that maybe, just maybe, we planted seeds within that mother that maybe she didn't go through with yet another abortion. She missed the first appointment her OB scheduled for her. So I have hope in that. But we're living in a space now where I don't know what happened with that baby, and I have every hope that that mom knows that she can come back to us. And even if she did, God forbid, have another abortion with that survivor and they lost their life, that baby's life is not in vain. Because I can tell you we've learned something through the midst of that. The most at-risk abortion survivor is the one who survived the first attempt to abort them. And as I shared, federal Born Alive legislation doesn't even know who they are right now. There is no federal Born Alive legislation, but as we try to package that and push for it, our bills don't even capture who that survivor is. Our state bills don't capture who those survivors are by and large. And yes, we're going to partner with you collaboratively to deal with that from a policy standpoint. But what I can tell you is that as an organization, we know we are called to serve not just adult abortion survivors with healing and community and equipping them and then activating them in advocates and ambassador roles, but we're here to intervene at the first chance we're given to save an abortion survivor's life. And that starts with being there for their mothers. So we are adding more social workers and nurses to our team. You are going to see us rebuilding our website and our messaging once again so that we are talking directly to those moms. We're going to be engaging in research studies starting this summer to know the best messaging and the evidence-based practices that these moms need based on not only who we're serving right now, but the moms that we are serving in one-on-one support and support groups. Our clinical social worker, Kara, we have Kira's and Sarah's. Kira is working with moms right now, not only who are pregnant, carrying babies who are at risk of another abortion attempt, but she is also serving moms who are parenting their child who survived their abortion. So we have moms who are parenting babies. We have moms who are parenting 30-year-olds. So she works with them one-on-one, and also we're running groups so these moms can talk to other moms and establish relationships with people who know what it's like to be in their shoes. Kira is also working one-on-one and running support groups with adoptive parents, like an adoptive mom who reached out to us recently. She said, our 10-month-old survived both chemical abortion pills, and we need help navigating this open adoption with their biological mom. These groups exist not only to support abortion survivors, moms, and adoptive families, but they're also here to help you. You are going to hear more and more of these stories, and we don't expect you to know everything and how to work with them, what to say to them, but that's what we're here for. So the best way to reach us right now to refer a mom, refer an adoptive parent, or ask us questions, ask for our marketing materials. We have incredible materials that we're building out to put in your hands. The best way to reach us right now, info@abortionsurvivors.org. We are humbled, to say the least, to be those that survived abortion attempts and those that are called to save the lives of those babies at risk of yet another abortion attempt, and to serve those moms big and well, just like our very moms who attempted to abort us. So please reach out, whether it's a policy-related issue, if you want to know more about advocates, ambassadors, or how to refer or know more about our marketing materials. You are going to enjoy your time with Lauren so much today, and I hope to see you next year.
That was absolutely excellent. Before I introduce Lauren, I failed to introduce myself. I am Linda Bell. I'm the president of Florida Right to Life. I do all the lobbying, from the free state of Florida, Florida Right to Life. I do all the lobbying for Florida Right to Life as well as most of our communications. And I'm also the chairman of the board to the National Right to Life Board of Directors, and I'm very pleased to be with you this afternoon. I would now like to introduce Lauren. Lauren Eden is a wife, mom, minister, and a second trimester surgical abortion survivor. In 2019, Lauren connected with the Abortion Survivors Network, which led to her sharing her story of surviving an abortion. Lauren has a passion to use her voice to help others understand the truth about abortion. Being a voice for the unborn and helping people understand the church's role in coming alongside women who find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy. She considers herself a champion for life and for the next generation. Lauren lives in the Atlanta area with her husband David and their 3 boys. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you all so much. What a privilege and an honor it is to be here with you today on this historic day, the first anniversary of the Dobbs case, the Dobbs decision and Roe being overturned. I know we've rejoiced about that, but we can rejoice again, right? I want to, of course, honor Melissa Ohden and thank her for not only using her own story to help create awareness about abortion survivors, but also for the work, the tremendous amount of work that she has done over the years to connect with so many abortion survivors like myself. The irony is not lost on me that 1 year ago yesterday, I met Melissa Ohden in Atlanta for the very first time in person. She and I had been talking back and forth via email for about 2.5 years. And when I heard that she was going to fly into Atlanta to speak at the National Right to Life Convention in Atlanta, I quickly sent her an email and said, I would love to meet you if there's any opportunity for us to get together. And Melissa, of course, said that she and her girls were going to be at the National Right to Life Convention and that she would love to have dinner with me and my family the night before she was set to speak here. And so that night, we did what every Atlantan would do. we took Melissa and her girls to the original Chick-fil-A Dwarf House in Hapeville. And my boys, my oldest son's here today, Ethan Wave. That's Ethan, my oldest. But we went to meet with Melissa and her girls, and we had such an amazing time. And it was so nice to meet her face to face after so many months of communicating with her. She's amazing, as y'all know. But what you have to understand about that conversation with Melissa is that day was like a light bulb went on for me. Um, I had been talking to her for more than 2 years, and I had been navigating wanting to share my story for a very long time. But I was also very hesitant. And the reason that I was hesitant was because my own mom had not given me full permission to put it out there, so to speak. But as only God would do, over the next few months after Melissa and I met, God worked in my mom's heart, and my mom released me through a series of circumstances to be able to share my story publicly. So now I'm standing here with you today on the day, the 1 year anniversary of Roe being overturned. And as only God would do, I'm able to share my story with you today. Praise God for that. So I stand today here before you, and I would love to start with telling you a little bit about my story, which I didn't find out until I was an adult. You can see some pictures there of me on the screen. I grew up in a very loving Christian home. I was actually born in Arkansas. Where are my Arkansas Right to Life people? There they are. I met some of them yesterday. My parents met at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And I grew up in a very loving Christian home. I have two sisters. I'm one of three girls, and now I have three boys. So God has a sense of humor. But my mom stayed home with us most of my childhood, and my dad worked as an avionics engineer. First at Falcon Jet. I don't know if that even still exists, if y'all know about that in Little Rock. But then it took us, his job took us from Little Rock to Minneapolis, where it's freezing cold. And about 5 years into my dad's job there, he decided he wanted to transfer to Atlanta, hot Atlanta, because they were tired of the cold weather. So that's what took us to Atlanta. So we moved to Atlanta when I was in high school. And then I went on to attend college at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. And I went there intending to go into broadcast journalism. That was my plan. But right before I graduated from college, I felt God calling me into full-time ministry. So I moved back home to intern at my home church while I looked for a full-time job. Well, during that summer following graduation, on June 20th, 2004, I was unpacking after a trip when my mom knocked on my bedroom door. She had a very strange expression on her face, and I really couldn't quite read it. She looked at me, and her big green eyes filled with tears. "I've never meant to keep this from you," she said. "I know you've always known that you were born premature, but what you don't know is about all of the circumstances that led up to your premature birth. You see, when I first found out I was pregnant with you, I wanted to have an abortion," she said. An abortion? It felt like all the wind was sucked out of my bedroom that day. And it also felt like I was like having an out-of-body experience and watching a scene from a movie unfold right in front of me. It really didn't feel real. My mom went on to tell me that when she found out she was pregnant, she was a freshman in college and my dad was a senior. She told my dad she was pregnant around the end of February 1982. And for about a month, they avoided talking about it. But several weeks into her pregnancy, my mom knocked on my dad's apartment door to deliver the news that she wanted to have an abortion. My dad did not agree with my mom's decision, and he begged her to reconsider. But my mom's mind was made up. She moved forward with her plans. She made an appointment at an abortion clinic, and she asked her friend to take her to the clinic. My dad was supposed to drive my mom to her friend's house, very reluctant. But as they were driving, my mom put her head down on my dad's lap and went to sleep. My dad put his hand on my mom's stomach, and as he was driving, he prayed and he begged God to intervene. As they were driving, a cloud of fog, like my dad says he has never seen, sat on the road in front of them. He began to drive slowly through the fog, but he couldn't see the front of his car. So he drove slowly to a point where he could turn around, and he told my mom that they were forced to turn back. My mom rescheduled her appointment. My mom's friend then took her to a second appointment at the same abortion clinic. They drove more than 2 hours to get to the clinic, and when they arrived, the clinic was closed. They found a payphone, called the number in the phone book, and found out that the clinic had moved to the other side of town. So they had to go back home and reschedule her appointment. The third time, they went to an appointment. The staff did an ultrasound to measure my head circumference. Their measurements showed that my mom was just over 13 weeks pregnant. That particular clinic only did abortions up to 12 weeks. Another roadblock. I think back to my own 12-week ultrasound with Ethan. My husband and I sat in that tiny ultrasound room. We got our first glimpse of that baby boy on that small black and white ultrasound screen. We studied his little face. We studied his beating heart, and we watched his little legs kick on that screen right in front of us. We were in awe of the life that God had created inside of me. And we knew that God had a purpose and a plan for his life. He has a purpose and a plan for every life that he creates. But my mom, she didn't have that same experience. She didn't know the Lord. She didn't want to be pregnant. And she was determined not to give up her plans. So she made another appointment at another abortion clinic that did abortions up to 15 weeks. When my mom arrived at that clinic, she found herself in that same familiar ultrasound room. This time, my head circumference measured in at 15.3 weeks. But it had only been 2 days since her last ultrasound in the clinic that she had gone to before. My mom was very determined, y'all. She went back to her dorm at the University of Arkansas, and she got an appointment the next morning at a clinic in Dallas, Texas, that did abortions up to 21 weeks. But when they got there and they did that ultrasound, it showed that my mom was just over 21 weeks pregnant. It didn't make any sense. It had been less than a week since she had been to the last clinic. My mom was starting to feel like someone much bigger than her was trying to prevent her from going through with her plan. The clinic staff sent my mom to their sister clinic on the other side of Dallas, and they assured her that that clinic would take their ultrasound results, and they did. Because she was in her second trimester at this point, she had to have a 2-day surgical abortion procedure, or a D&E. The abortionist proceeded to insert a substance called laminaria into my mom's cervix, which they told her would cause her cervix to fully dilate by the very next morning. She was told to go back to where she was staying, take Tylenol as needed for pain, and try to get some rest. Ha. That night, my mom found herself scared, in labor, and in a lot of pain. To her surprise, around midnight that night, my dad called her and asked if he could pray for her. When he was done praying, God moved in my mom's heart, and she told my dad that if he would drive to the clinic in Dallas and meet her there for her 8 o'clock appointment the next morning, she was 90% sure she would not go through with the abortion. My dad left his house in North Little Rock, Arkansas at 4 a.m. to drive to Dallas. When he arrived at the clinic, he was a little bit late and he couldn't find my mom. He was pacing the halls, listening to the sounds of women crying, hearing the suction machines, afraid that she was already in a room going through with the abortion procedure. But to his relief, the elevator doors opened behind him, and my mom was standing there. She had overslept. My dad hugged my mom, and they went in to tell the clinic staff that she was not going to go through with the abortion procedure. The abortionist told my mom that her cervix was fully dilated and that my mom was ready to give birth. My mom said she was willing to take the chance. And the next day, they drove home. And once again, God was at work in my mom's heart. As they drove, my mom recounted to my dad all of the obstacles that she had faced at every clinic she had gone to. My dad smiled because he realized that God was the one who was preventing my mom time and time again from going through with her plans. Every clinic that my mom went to, my dad was keeping up with my mom through a friend, and he was praying that God would intervene. In fact, he had much of his church praying too, and God did, time and time again. Back in North Little Rock, a young married couple from my dad's church took my mom in. Their names are Bill and Jana. Jana spent her days attending to my mom. My mom had to be on bed rest, while also taking care of her two young children. At night, she would stay up late with my mom and dad, talking about her faith, reading the Bible, and praying with them about what they should do. My mom didn't know it then, but Jana's mom had also wanted to abort Jana. You see how God works. After a few weeks of living with Bill and Jana, my mom woke up in the middle of the night and she knew something was wrong. She was in labor and she was only 26 weeks pregnant. When my mom arrived at the hospital, the doctor said that there was a 5% chance that I would survive. And if I did survive, there was a 95% chance that I would have brain damage. Throughout my mom's labor, my dad and Jana were on their knees praying. On July 26, 1982, at 8:26 a.m., I was born, weighing in at 2 pounds, 6.5 ounces. I was actually born in caul, which means I was still inside of the amniotic sac, another symbol to me of the Lord's protection. I was rushed off to the NICU, and miraculously, not only did I survive, but I had no brain damage and very few complications from my premature birth. My mom had still planned to put me up for adoption, but when she saw my tiny body that fit in the palm of her hand, she knew that she wanted to keep me. I spent 53 days in the NICU, and Jana brought my mom to visit every single day. The nurses even made clothes for my tiny body out of baby doll patterns. And my parents dated as normally as they could for having a baby in the NICU. But shortly after that, I was released from the hospital, and my parents got married. I was able to be at their wedding. Today, I'm 40 years old, and my parents just celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary this past October. You can go to the next slide. We went from being a family of 5 with 3 girls to a family of 12. Y'all can see pictures of my extended family on the screen. My parents now have 5 grandsons. My dad prayed all those years for a boy, and he got them in excess. I have a wonderful husband now and 3 sons, one of which is here with me today. And I've had the opportunity to serve on 3 church staffs in the Atlanta area where I've been able to share Jesus with the next generation. I've also had the opportunity, as you've heard, to connect with the Abortion Survivors Network, which is an amazing group of people. If there's one thing that I could share with you all today, it's that my life is a living testimony that our God is a God of miracles. No life that he creates is an accident, right? No life is a mistake. My story is proof that God's plans are bigger than any human's plans, any doctor's plans, any president's plans, any lobbyist's plans, any Planned Parenthood executive's plans. And when we join God and his plan, he invites us into his story. He is in the business of saving lives, and we all have the opportunity to be a part of that, which is amazing. So, with all of that said, how can our stories as abortion survivors and your stories as workers in the pro-life movement become a partnership to save lives? My involvement with the Abortion Survivors Network has helped me be able to go through healing training. Melissa has written an amazing curriculum for abortion survivors. You can see some of their pictures on the screen. It's also given me the opportunity to go through speakers training. I have a journalism degree and I have a little bit of speaking experience, but it's really helped me hone my skills and be able to share my story, which is a lot different to share this with people than it is to talk about the news, let me tell you. But God has used those skills to empower me and enable me to do this. And over the past year, I've even had the opportunity to be able to lead some of the survivors you see on the screen through speakers training. And as you can imagine, for people who have such very personal, deeply touching stories, it's a journey. And not every survivor is ready to share. But God is slowly working in hearts and lives and launching them and equipping them to share in their own states and in their own way. And like Melissa shared in her video, even if it's just with one person and they change the mind of one person about abortion, then we can all make a difference together. So before I get involved in some practical ways about how we can come alongside of each other, I want you to meet a little bit more of my ASN family, and I also want to share with you some terms that we're asked about a lot. So the first slide I want to share with you is, what is an abortion survivor? Who is an abortion survivor? An abortion survivor is an individual who remains alive after an attempted abortion failed to end their life when they were in the womb. Abortion survivors include those who have survived chemical, surgical, at-home methods to induce abortion, successful abortion pill reversals, instances where women have stopped their abortion in the middle of the process like my mom did, and twin abortion survivors. If you'll go to the next slide. What is a failed abortion? A failed abortion is a method of abortion that fails to end the baby's life. This can occur in all the different methods of abortion that I just mentioned. In many survivors' experiences, repeat methods or a combination of methods were performed at different gestations, and the abortion attempts failed every single time. In circumstances like this, the doctors suspect in a lot of instances that there were twins or multiples, and that one twin or one of the babies was taken and the other one survived. What is a stopped abortion? A stopped abortion is when a woman stops her abortion due to either being further along gestationally than she expected or the doctors predicted, the physical pain of the procedure, regret during the multiple steps of the procedure, or in the case of stopped abortions, there may be a physical risk to the mom and to the baby. But as Melissa also shared, when an abortion is stopped, there is also hope. And that's where we come in as the Abortion Survivors Network. So how common are abortion survivors? Well, it's important to note that our federal legislation, our federal reporting, and our state reporting are not consistent across the board. Not every state reports instances of abortion survivors. Our medical billing code codes are not very specific when it comes to abortion survivors. So we don't have a lot of standards across the board on abortion reporting. But what I can tell you is this. According to Dr. Willard Cates, the director of the CDC Abortion Surveillance Committee in the 1980s, he estimated that 400 to 500 abortion live births occur annually in the United States. If you take that number and you multiply it over across the 50 years that Roe v. Wade was in law, then that means that 20,000 live births have occurred over 49 and a half years of Roe v. Wade being our nation's law. And the CDC was also quoted estimating that 700 to 800 live births occur after abortions in the United States. This is just in the US alone, y'all, that I'm telling you about. These two estimates alone mean that 19,600 to 39,200 abortion survivors have survived in the United States alone. This does not include at-home abortion attempts. It does not include chemical abortions, and it does not include babies who are born after APR or abortion pill reversals. So, with that said, these numbers are not included in reporting, and we know that more than 50% of abortions in our world today are being performed at home using chemical abortion pills, which means now after Roe, the likelihood of babies surviving abortions is much greater than even the statistics that I've just shared with you today. So, on to the next slide. From 2003 to 2014, the CDC concluded definitively that 143 infant deaths in the U.S. occurred as the result of induced abortions. This was likely a very gross underestimate because these are not just reported numbers from, these are reported numbers from just the hospitals. This does not include abortion facilities or at-home attempts. Of these babies who were reported to the CDC, 68 of them lived for 1 to 4 hours, 9 of them lived for 5 to 9 hours, and 6 of them lived 1 day or more. So what about state reporting? Currently, there are only a handful of states with born alive reporting laws, and states like Minnesota even had a repeal in 2023. These numbers are from the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and they are taken from multiple years over the past few years. But you can see on the screen that Idaho, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Oklahoma all have reported the number of failed abortions and incomplete abortions. So where can we find the most accurate representation of the number of abortion survivors? Well, as Melissa mentioned earlier in the video, ASN has taken Canadian data because it is the most accurate, and taken the Canadian population and the US population and extrapolated the data to get an estimate of abortion survivors in the United States. So based on 7 years of Canadian data, the average percentage of abortions that have resulted in a live birth in Canada is 0.21%. Now, when you look at that number, it doesn't seem like a huge percentage, right? It doesn't seem like a huge number. But an estimated 1,734 infants are born alive following a failed abortion procedure each year in the U.S. This number is based on CDC and Johnston's archive abortion counts. And this means that after nearly 50 years of Roe v. Wade, an estimated 85,817 infants were born alive following a failed abortion procedure. So while the 0.21% doesn't look like a big number, when you look at it across 50 years, it's actually a very significant number. So what does this mean for the Abortion Survivors Network? And what does this mean for all of us? First, we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. As of this month, ASN has connected with 666 abortion survivors around the world. And that is all thanks to Melissa and the hard work that she has done with connecting with abortion survivors. And as a matter of fact, this month alone, ASN has connected with 6 abortion survivors, and most of them, as Melissa mentioned, have been people who have gone through chemical abortions. So survivors range in age from babies in the womb who have recently survived abortion attempts to abort them, and many who are still at risk of repeat abortions. They range from people in, babies who we've just found out about, all the way to people in their 90s. They also come from states and countries all across the U.S. and the world. As a matter of fact, as Melissa was naming some of the people and talking about some of the stories, I was thinking about just this year, the people I've met through Abortion Survivors Network come from all over the world. Sri Lanka. Oh my goodness, if y'all can go to ASN's YouTube channel and look at our survivor from Sri Lanka's story, it is incredible. But you can go there and you can hear a lot of different stories from people who have completed our speakers training. So I would encourage you to do that. So far, ASN has connected with survivors from 23 countries around the globe, and they've all survived a variety of abortion procedures. Predominantly, more survivors are raised by their biological families, like myself, rather than being adopted, which is something that surprises a lot of us, including myself. So, last thing I want to share with you is how can we partner together? I'm just going to tell you about a couple of the things that I've been able to do. And Claire Bartlett, give us a wave. She's our Georgia Life Alliance director, executive director. And she and I have a new relationship because she just started in January, right? So she's very new in Georgia. But about a year ago, Melissa connected me with Liz and Josh Edmonds, who some of y'all may know from Georgia Life Alliance, and they were the first ones to really connect me with a group of people in Georgia who are in the pro-life movement. And so when I was ready to start sharing my story and using my voice, Liz and Josh were very gracious to take me under their wing and to say, hey, come and do some things with us. And so after I did we do like a big event for all of our speakers who graduate from speaker training. So I did that in December in Kansas City, and I was able to speak and share my story publicly for the very first time. And then right on the heels of that, in January, I was able to share my story at the Capitol in Georgia, and at the Together for Life rally, and that was sponsored by Georgia Life Alliance and the Archdiocese of Atlanta and the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. And so I met Claire there for the very first time, actually. I remember her coming up and handing me her card, and since then we've had a close relationship, and it's been really fun to get to do some other events with her. So you see some pictures on the screen. Oh, sorry, go back one slide. I apologize. You see some pictures on the screen of some of the things that we've gotten to do together just over the past 6 months, including we've partnered with 40 Days for Life, Life Initiatives and Values in Georgia, Frontline Policy Council, and like I said, the Archdiocese of Atlanta and the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. And we have a pretty strong pro-life alliance in the state of Georgia, which is great because in the political climate that we're in right now in Atlanta, as y'all know, in Georgia, it's been a pretty topsy-turvy couple of years. And so to be able to partner with all of those groups and to have so many voices in the pro-life movement joining together is a huge blessing. So you'll see pictures of in March. That top middle picture is Liz and Claire and Senator Ed Setzler, who's the author of Georgia's Heartbeat Bill, Suzanne and Rachel Guy from 40 Days for Life. We were all at the Georgia Supreme Court's oral arguments for the Life Act, and we're still waiting on their decision on that. So y'all can be praying for that because we know that that decision is going to set the precedent in Georgia and in a lot of countries across the United States when it comes to abortion. And then the same thing in May, Claire invited me to be one of the judges at GLA's Speak Life Oratory Contest, and it was so much fun. Ethan went with me. We got to hear some high school juniors and seniors share their pro-life speeches, and I understand right now is actually when the national competition is going on. So that's exciting. We'll see who the winners are of that. But it was so much fun to be able to speak to those teens and encourage them in their journey in the pro-life movement. And then Claire and I, of course, have been strategizing a little bit. We've had some conversations about what this next legislative session is going to look like and what the bills are that GLA is really trying to find sponsors for and and really champion in this new legislative session. And so we're looking at ways that myself as an abortion survivor or any other survivors in our network can partner and help use their voice in committee hearings or legislative sessions in this new legislative season. So, and that's just a few examples of some ways that we can all partner together to raise awareness in our states, because as we all know, this has become a battle in the states. And the more voices we have fighting for life, the better. So we can leverage our resources and utilize survivors in your states. And Melissa mentioned, if you go to abortionsurvivors.org, there's actually an interactive map on our website that shows you if you have an abortion survivor in your state who has gone through speakers training. Now, if they're not listed on the website, if you don't have someone for your specific state, you can email that info at abortionsurvivors.org, and Melissa and her team will get you in touch with someone who would be the best fit for you. We do have some people in the pipeline who are going through healing and speakers training, so it's very likely in the near future that you will have someone in your state. But I want to suggest to you today that the voices and stories of abortion survivors are a big piece that is missing from the pro-life movement. How many of y'all were aware that 666 abortion survivors had connected with the Abortion Survivors Network? How many of y'all were aware that 85,000 babies have likely survived abortions in the United States? So our awareness is so important, and those voices of survivors just change the landscape. They change people's hearts and minds. Hearing someone's story and connecting personally is what makes the biggest impact. So I would encourage all of you, please, please, please connect with Abortion Survivors Network. Please, if you're planning an event, a march, a pro-life rally, if you need someone to testify for some legislation in your state, please allow us to come alongside of you and to partner with you, because our voices are very much missing in this movement and can really make a big difference. So I want to end by saying thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All of you have been in this fight for as long as I've been alive in a lot of situations, or some of you longer than I've been alive, and you have been fighting this fight tirelessly, day in and day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, and I know it gets exhausting. But I want to tell you, I want to encourage you today, if there's one thing I could leave you with, is that you're not here by accident. I'm not here by accident. And God is weaving our stories together for such a time as this. Abortion survivors do exist. Our stories matter. And I'm living proof of just that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I can't even imagine the amount of courage. Takes a lot of courage. We thank you. I'd now like to cue up a video from State Representative Dr. Bryce from Kansas that was aired on the Kayleigh McEnany show last night.
Role in that fight. Here's the interview. Dr. Bryce, I had the pleasure of meeting you twice out at a pro-life event in Kansas, and I was so moved by your story. There were eyes in the room that were not dry when you shared it. You were in a hospital, you're a medical doctor, you heard a code blue, and tell us what happened.
Thank you, Kayleigh. It's great to be here. Yes, I was a medical resident practicing. I was on call for the neonatal intensive care unit when there was a code blue in the operating suites. And so I went expecting to see some sort of a cardiac arrest or something like that, but it wasn't anything like I imagined. When I burst into the room, the female patient, was awake. She was on the operating table. The surgeons, the nurses weren't saying anything to me. And then I heard just to my right, in the corner on a metal table, was a premature infant, a baby boy who was crying. And then I realized in just a second that this had been an abortion where the baby had slipped out of the womb before he was dismembered. And so because he was set aside to possibly die, but he was too tough to die. This guy did the seemingly impossible. He survived his abortion. So he was too tough to die. I took him into the neonatal intensive care unit, cared for him for about a day before he did die. But it just stunned me that it was possible for a baby to survive an abortion. And I thought it was just a one-off, that surely it didn't happen very often. But as luck would have it, I was doing research with the Department of Public Health a few weeks later when I talked with the public health director about this, and he agreed to do a study and see how frequently babies are born alive after abortion. And to my shock, we found 27 cases over the 3-year study.
Wow.
Where babies were born alive after abortion in our county. And so extrapolating that nationwide, it's just very much a more common occurrence than most people even realize.
So when Democrats say we don't need Born Alive Protection Act legislation, of course a doctor is going to help a baby that's alive. You showed up in a room with a code blue. No doctor was helping that baby. They literally were just leaving that baby to die. Is that right?
Right.
Wow.
Think of yourself for a minute just as an abortion provider, and you're paid basically to take the life in the womb, and then the baby somehow comes out alive. You immediately have a conflict of interest, and you either have to treat the baby as a newborn baby and with all the care for that gestational age, or maybe set the baby aside, like in my case with that patient, and hope the baby dies, or God forbid, take the life of the baby, as we've heard some reports in the past.
Yeah.
But the good news is Kansas did pass the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. We overrode the governor's veto with a supermajority, bipartisan. It was a great thing. And now there's only one option in the state of Kansas when a baby is born alive after abortion, and that is to care for that baby just as you would any baby of similar gestational age and condition.
Wow, Dr. Bryce, so glad you overrode the governor's veto, and that little baby's life that you held in your hands, that baby's life mattered, and that baby's life is now saving other babies' lives. Thank you so much,
I
Dr.
hope
Bryce.
so. Thank you, Kaylee.
Coming up, we're gonna have a little fun on a Friday.
Thank you. That's a very appropriate video for this session, isn't it? I would now like to introduce Jennifer Popick, JD. Jennifer serves as the Federal Legislative Director of the National Right to Life, and she directs the Robert Powell Center for Medical Ethics, which deals with euthanasia-related issues, including assisted suicide and other end-of-life issues. Jennifer received her law degree from Cleveland Marshall College of Law and has 4 beautiful children, and we can all attest to that. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for that speech. It's tough to get up and follow that, I swear. Very beautiful. Let me talk a little bit about what's going on in Congress on this issue. So for those of you who've been around this movement for a long time, you might think back to when George Bush, the second George Bush was president. Wasn't something already done? Like this got, a lot of you will have a vague memory of this. In 2002, what was passed was called the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. And what that did was that said that any baby born, no matter the circumstances, was a human being under the law. It seemed like a really simple thing at the time. It was to, in some way, give these babies the full protection of law should they be born in an attempted abortion or under any sort of similar circumstances. It was passed unanimously without a single dissenting vote. It's unheard of to me to something like this would have, nothing like this today could pass the Senate unanimously. I think Democrats at the time, didn't want to touch it, didn't want to fight it. It became law. That became law in 2002 unanimously. What happened in the years that followed was it was clear that, so certainly, a baby born alive, it was a more clear-cut case that, as the doctor said, abortionists wouldn't necessarily be taking the life of this baby. There were rare circumstances of this sort of thing happening, maybe not so rare, but in any event, those circumstances were less rare than what was going on, was that these babies were not being given any medical care. So along comes the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, and similarly named. Now this bill's been around for several Congresses. Right now, Ann Wagner is the sponsor in the House from Missouri. Steve Scalise, who's the majority leader, is a very, very serious champion of this piece of legislation. And then in the Senate, it's Senator John Thune. So when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker last Congress, there was over 80 different attempts by Republicans. They would come out, bring this to the floor, they'd ask for unanimous consent that simply says when a baby born at any state, when a baby's born in an attempted abortion, that baby be given the same standard of care that any other baby that age would be given. We're not talking about, trying to force a physician to, to try and save a 12-week-old baby, which does not have a chance, to survive. But what would you do if this was one of your OB patients in a hospital setting? What would you do there? That has to be done if it's an abortion or regular. So, that baby would be given comfort, be given warmth, be taken care of till the baby passed. If the baby's old enough to treat, this bill would require that, including transportation. So a lot of times these babies are born in like these, these Planned Parenthood facilities, or that might not have anything surgical on site, might be born in, like a front of a strip mall, wherever an abortion might be, something like this. The baby needs to be transported to a hospital. So the Republicans came out day after day after day asking for unanimous consent. It was nothing that the media wanted to cover, and we hope it's something that we covered, in other pro-life groups, because this was a really, really enormous effort in the last Congress. The Republicans came out with a discharge petition, which they were trying to work around Speaker Pelosi by getting enough signatures on a petition to draw a vote. They weren't able to do that. They had shadow hearings. The work was really terrific on this. So when the new Congress came in, this 118th Congress, after 80 different attempts to bring this to the floor, in 8 days, they had a vote on it in the House. And every Republican voted in favor of this life-saving legislation. One Democrat voted in favor. One. What a far cry we are from the Democrat Party of 2002, who would just go, like, this is a bridge too far for us. We want to, we don't want to be involved in this. To all but one Democrat hanging together to defeat this piece of legislation. So that was Cuellar from Texas who voted yes, and Gonzalez from Texas voted present. The only two who had anything different to say than the rest of the Democrats. So what I love about your story, what I love about Melissa Ohden, is I think that this problem suffers from unbelievability, doesn't it? I don't think people want to believe this is really happening. So the work of you all is so critical. It is so critical. So, Melissa, I've seen her testify wonderfully in front of Congress so many times to bring attention to this issue. I just commend your work, and I recommend everybody go to their website, abortionsurvivors.org. I'll make another plug for you. So the House has done their job for this Congress. The House has done their job. They've passed this life-saving piece of legislation. Now, what I would encourage you all to do is to contact your U.S. Senator and say that you want some kind of action on it. Republicans are not in charge in the Senate. Chuck Schumer is in charge. He sets the agenda. There's often opportunity on must-pass pieces of legislation, on different kinds of legislation, that senators can offer amendments. And this is one that we'd strongly love to see the Senate take another vote on. Ben Sasse used to sponsor it in the past. Right now, it's Senator Thune that has this piece of legislation. And while I do not think we could get to 60 under the current environment, that's what we need to get to, 60 senators. We're hopeful, we could hold together most, if not all, the Republicans, and perhaps a few more might come along. So I think there's work Congress can do here. I also would commend your attention to the abortion pill reversal legislation. Now, that's in a lot of states. Um, Congressman Lamborn from Colorado has offered it in the House, the Second Chance at Life Act. So we're strongly supportive of that kind of legislation as well, that women get informed that it's possible to reverse the intended effect of a chemical abortion if it's possible if you've only taken the first dose of the medication, possible. So with that, I urge you to contact the Senate. I urge you to keep following this issue. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. So I think that's all I've got.
Before we do announcements, we're going to have our final videos from abortion survivors. Please cue the video.
Hello, my name is Delana Brooks, and I'm an abortion survivor. My mother was in college when she discovered she was pregnant with me, and she believed abortion was her only answer. So my mother and father went to an abortionist in Fort Worth, Texas, pre-Roe. She had the abortion, but the abortionist failed at taking my life that day. I had scars on my body, but as a child, I did not know where these scars came from. I always had questions, but I never had the answers. 8 weeks after I was born, I was placed in a closed adoption with a loving family, only 30 miles from where my biological mother lived. I met my biological parents when I was in my early 20s, and my mother eventually shared with me about the abortion. She also shared that she believed the scars I have on my chest and legs were from the abortion. I wish people knew that survivors of abortion exist. I wish they knew the outcome of abortion is not always death. It is often a live birth. Babies survive abortion. I survived abortion. Tens of thousands survived pre-Roe, and they are surviving post-Roe as well. I lived, even though several set out that day to end my life. I am now an executive director of a pregnancy help center in Fort Worth, Texas, the very city in which I survived. I am now able to speak truth about the horrific act of abortion and use my voice. I am grateful for my life. The voice that was not meant to speak is now speaking. And I will use my voice to speak the truth about abortion. I am hopeful. Truth will prevail, and our culture will see abortion for what it really is, the death of a child. I am hopeful laws will continue to be passed to protect the most vulnerable among us, and our culture will recognize preborn children as having value, worth, dignity, and the right to live.
Hi, my name is Micaela, and I'm an abortion survivor. I was born in the Midwest at an abortion clinic on a migrant farm. It was believed that I was at the end of my second trimester, early third trimester, when the vacuum aspiration that was meant to take my life failed. I don't have a day of birth because of this. There were no records kept when I was moved from hospital to save my life. I don't know who brought me to that hospital, but I thank God for them every day. I was also abandoned with my 2-year-old brother and placed for foster care. We were adopted after the age of 6 years old. We were in roughly 36 homes by then. I know that social media says that we are a choice, unworthy, clump of cells, but that's not true. We were chosen. We're created in God's most perfect image. And if you're out there today, no matter who you are, thinking that you're anything less than that, I'm here to tell you that you're not. You are worthy and you are loved. I think that our generation is ending the trend. Abortion and being pro-choice, I think, was something that meant to be cool back in the day. People kind of hopping on the bandwagon and not really thinking about the consequences of what it truly meant. What it truly means is my life. I'm here. I'm a human being. I have a family. I live in Ohio. I have 2 children. My life was just as important during that botched abortion as it is today. Nothing's changed. The only thing that's different about me is I'm more educated. I'm a little bit taller. And I have children. Those same children that were in my tiny little womb when I was a baby. I think it's time to end the trend. Make pro-life what's valuable and cool. There are other abortion survivors out there. There are other people out there that have survived many, many different things. And again, I want you to know you are loved and you are worthy. Thank you.
My name is Amy Miles, and I live in Oregon. I was born in an abortion clinic in a college town. My medical records state a young woman came in for a therapeutic abortion and a viable infant was born. I was anywhere from 27 to 30 weeks gestation. And as a result of the abortion procedure, I had a brain injury and have the experience of living with cerebral palsy. For me, that impacts my hearing and my coordination of my legs. But I can tell you that being an abortion survivor has an impact on me each and every day. I was in the NICU for about a month after I was born, and that's where my parents met me for the first time. A couple who desperately wanted to have a child of their own, but couldn't. They met me there and took me home shortly after. And my mom talks about how the nuns at the hospital seemed like angels as they carried me out and helped her put me in the car. I wish that people knew that babies survive abortions. Every day there's babies just like I was that are surviving all types of abortion procedures, including both surgical and chemical. I wish that people knew that abortion not only impacts the survivor, it's important for the survivor to be seen, heard, and respected. But abortion impacts birth mothers, birth fathers. It impacts families and generations. Adoptive families and mothers who they themselves have experienced abortion need support, and they need to be heard as well. I wish people knew that the way we are going to make a real culture change is by telling our stories, sharing the truth, all of us together, survivors, birth parents, siblings, adoptive parents. By sharing my story and hearing survivor stories of other people, I hope that one day abortion is unthinkable. The truth will bring light to the lies and deception that is the abortion industry. Women, babies, and families deserve better than what abortion offers. By sharing the truth, future generations will know what abortion is, and they will stand up for the rights of every human being, preborn and born. They will know that every life matters.
Hello, my name is Kim Marvin, the illegal abortionist in downtown Seattle, Washington, who was a trained OBGYN, tried to take my life through a saline injection at just 2 months in the womb. It was noted on the report that I was not a viable pregnancy. Since the abortion attempt was not successful, here I am. My high school sweetheart parents did get married and are still married today, and we now have a family of 5. Currently, I live in Kirkland, Washington, where we raised our 3 children. What I wish people knew about abortion survivors is this: we exist. I would guess about 10% of the world population even knows that a baby can survive an abortion. It's not a large percent. We have a big job ahead of us. In fact, based on correlated data from Canada, there are approximately 1,734 abortion survivors per year in the US alone. It is not easy being a survivor. Our culture doesn't know we exist, and once confronted with an existence, most would like us to just disappear. The truth is, we have been invisible longer than we have been visible. Most of us thought we were the only survivor here on this planet. Thankfully, Melissa started Abortion Survivor Network in 2019, which has been vital for our existence. She created a place that survivors all over the world can go through the healing curriculum, find friendly support, feel accepted and loved, find professional speakers training, and have a community that makes it easier to be a survivor in our current culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. As we close, we're going to have some announcements made, but I want to thank every one of you for being here this afternoon. What a blessing this entire session has been. So thank